It's fruitcake weather. This morning I read one of my favorite little short stories. It's become a tradition for me. It's a Christmas memory, and I read it this time every year. It's by Truman Capote, and it's the most wonderful little story about a 7-year-old boy named Buddy who lives in the South with his family, and he has a cousin who's in her 60s, and they're friends. So it's a 60-year-old woman and a 7-year-old boy, and they're the best friends. And this time of year, actually in November, when the frost breaks and the fireplace starts to roar, the woman and the little boy begin to make fruitcakes. And it's just a funny little episode of them collecting, seeing how much money they've collected throughout the year, and it tells you how they've gotten their pennies and change. And Capote has such a way with having phenomenal descriptions, like when they're talking about the change. Capote says, he says, dimes are the liveliest coin. They're the ones that really jingle. And even just throughout the year, anytime I see a dime, I always think, like, that's the jingliest coin. And nickels and quarters he describes as being weathered over like river rocks. And if you've ever held one of those very old quarters, it's just a perfect description. In any event, so they have to collect all of their ingredients for the fruitcake, and the most expensive ingredient is whiskey. And they get their whiskey from this scary old house by the river, and there's an Indian woman and her husband, and they've never met the husband, but he's a giant, and he has dark skin, and he has scars on his cheeks. And so the funny old woman and the little boy, they go down to the house expecting to see the wife to get the whiskey. And when they open the door, it's not the wife, but the husband. And he really is a giant. He's really as scary as they've ever thought. And the giant says, "What do you want?" And the woman says that they want whiskey, and he laughs. And he says, which one of you is going to be drinking the whiskey? And they say, "It's for our fruitcakes. We're making 30 fruitcakes." And the Indian frowns, and he leaves, and he comes back with a bottle of whiskey, and he says, "That'll be $2. The old woman takes out her coin purse and starts pouring change into the Indian's hands. And the Indian's looking at the change in his hands, and he's looking at the dotty old woman and the cheerful little boy, and he gives him back the change, and he says, "I'll tell you what, just bring over one of those fruitcakes." And so they leave, and the woman goes, "What a lovely man." And she says, "We're going to put an extra cup of raisins in his fruitcake." So they get back, and they make their fruitcakes, and they're going to mail them off to all of their friends. Well, it's not just their immediate friends. They mail them all over the country. They even send one to Mr. President Roosevelt. So now they're back in the kitchen. They're broke. They've spent all of their money on ingredients and also postage. And they have just a little bit of whiskey left in the bottle, just a little bit. So the woman pours out glasses, and so the 60-year-old woman and the 7-year-old boy start drinking whiskey in the kitchen, and they start dancing and having fun. And the other family members of the house walk in, and they're aghast, and they scold the old woman and say, like, a 7-year-old boy with whiskey on his breath. They break up the party. And the woman goes into her bedroom and cries, and the little boy comes in and says, like, stop crying, tomorrow we have to go cut down our tree. And that cheers her up, and the next day they go off and they cut a tree, and they come back, and they're gonna decorate the tree. And the woman says, it's gonna glow like a Baptist window. It's descriptions like that I love. Well, they don't have any money, so they decorate it by cutting out shaped pieces of paper. They cut out cats and fish and angels and watermelons and bananas, and they decorate them, and they load up the tree. And they talk about the presents that they're going to make for each other, and they're both going to make, they both make each other kites. They both love kites, but the woman always wished that she could give the little boy a bicycle. She always says, like, one day I'm gonna get you a bicycle. She goes, I might even steal it. Well, Christmas morning comes along, and they have Christmas breakfast, and they open up all of their presents from all the different family members. But their favorite presents were the kites that they gave each other. And I've read this maybe 8, 9, 10 times, maybe more, and I always remember how sweet and jolly and fun the short story is. It's always kind of like exciting. I pick it up and I think, like, oh, it's fruitcake season. And nearly every time I forget how emotional I get towards the end, when it gets extremely tender, and it's still sweet, but now it's sad. They're off. They go off to fly their kites, and the old woman is saying how she always felt that that when she dies, she'll see the Lord. And now she's with the little boy, and they're playing with their kites, and she thinks, like, maybe I'm already seeing him. And she says, I could die right now with my eyes. And finally the little boy has to move away. He goes off to military school. This is the point when I start tearing up. I didn't mention it, but they also had a little boy, and I'm sorry, a little dog that went on these adventures with them. And the old woman would write him letters and ask things like, go to the movies and write me what the story is about. And she would write them, and eventually she was writing less and less often. And finally, another fruitcake season comes along, and the old woman's no longer with us. And I'll read the last. The whole short story is so rich with sensual, engaging language. It's extremely descriptive and beautiful. It's just chock full of beautiful sentences. But where am I? And when that happens, I know it. A message saying, so merely confirms a piece of news some secret vein had already received, severing me from an irreplaceable part of myself, letting it loose like a kite on a broken string. That is why, walking across the school campus on this particular December morning, I keep searching the sky, as if I expected to see, rather like hearts, a lost pair of kites hurrying towards heaven. It's beautiful. He misses his friend. And it's Christmas Eve morning, and I'm crying my eyes out with my 2 cats staring at me. I have Andy, who this is going to be our second Christmas together, and I have Daphne, we're going to enjoy our first Christmas together. And it's just such an experience to read a story like this, where these characters, after reading it so often, um, feel like maybe not friends, but people that I know. And I miss the old woman just the way the little boy buddy misses the old woman, and I like them both, and I think about their um, um, relationship and their experience through the Christmas season, and it's so pure and innocent. Um, it's how I imagine um, Christmas should be. Making kites, making fruitcakes, and sending them to the president. Well, not today, but sending them to people that you've never even met, but that you like them. So just a joy. It's a wonderful short story, and I love it. So if you celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas. If not, Happy Holidays. If you don't celebrate any holidays, I just wish you well, and thank you for watching. And I'll leave a comment if you would like, and have a good rest of your day. Bye.